Hello and welcome to the Net Report podcast. My name is Jacob. I am welcome today with my co host and creator, Christopher. And we are going to kind of cover the last 2 days of what was kind of a crazy trade deadline. No major players traded, I will say that. Those all happened in the past few months. But a lot of role players moved around. I want to say it was a total of about 18 different trades. And there's some there's some interesting one here that I'd really like to break into, Chris. Let's just start chronologically with yesterday.
Yep.
The Boston Celtics acquire Xavier Tillman from the Memphis Grizzlies. Just second round picks, really, and some matching salary. This is, I mean, just big depth for them, but much needed big depth. He's excellent on the defensive end. And I just think that for a team like Boston, who has, in my opinion, my biased opinion, has the best top to bottom front six, I don't really think it's even close, to be very honest with you. And this just solidifies that the back end of that depth, but just a really good depth move, I think, from the Celtics here.
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
definitely. One of the more underrated centers over the past few years. Definitely has that impact defensively. You guys could use off the bench, and you really got him for seconds and matching salary. I mean, I know a lot of people on Twitter were complaining about his efficiency this year. Look, you're not using Tillman to score. You're using him for defense and off the bench and in spare quantity. So I love this trade for the
He's,
Celtics. When
he,
I saw it, I was like, wow, that's the perfect trade for them given what they were going to be able to do because there wasn't much wiggle room for trading.
we talk about usage of change of pace running backs in the NFL. Tillman's a change of pace center for
Mm-hmm.
the Celtics.
No,
When
agreed.
Horford needs a night off, or when Porzingis needs a night off, or when we're not grabbing those rebounds, or when Cornette just looks like ass out there, throw Tillman in for some quick burst of energy, grab some boards, get some blocks. It'll really help solidify the health of the team heading into the off season or into the playoffs rather. And yesterday we also got a pretty good trade for a role player, Monte Morris, heading over to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Shake Milton, Troy Brown in a second, heading back to Detroit. This is going to be a common theme that we're going to talk about today as far as it relates to the Pistons. Second round pick and matching salary for Monte Morris. Not that I think Monte should have gotten it first, but just keep that at the top of your mind. But more specifically for the Timberwolves, I love it. He's a great backup point guard to kind of like secure the bench when Mike Conley has to kind of sit or is out or anything of the sorts. It's just for a team that needs some good veterans. He's there for them.
And we saw him excel in Denver a few years ago, one of the best backup point guards in the league, really. And then he's kind of bounced around a little bit. He's been good some places, hasn't been good other places, but I think with this Timberwolves team he'll really shine, and I think he's a great pickup for them. I think he turns. I'm not gonna say turn around because it's not like he was bad in Detroit and these other stops, but really he's finally on a contender again, and I think it's a great move for the Timberwolves.
Definitely agree. It was Timberwolves' only move to the trade deadline, but it solidified. They didn't really need anything major on the front end. They got some good depth pieces in him, so good on the Timberwolves. Just very quickly going to run over this. Simon Fontecchio got traded to the Pistons from Utah. Utah got matching salary when Kevin Knox and a second round pick. It is going to be a very good second round pick because it's going to be the most favorable of Memphis and Washington. So more than likely a top five second round pick in there going to Utah. So Detroit clearly has interest in Fontecchio, but it's nothing to lose your mind
Just small
over.
trade, nothing crazy, but Utah gets a potentially good second round pick, so that's something for them.
For sure. Danny Ainge loves those picks.
Yes, he does.
And we started off our trade deadline morning this morning by getting a probably the second biggest trade today. Buddy Hield is
Mm-hmm.
traded from the Indiana Pacers to the Philadelphia 76ers. Marcus Morris and Furkan Korkmaz as matching salary plus 3 second round picks go back to Indiana. I mean, this is really, really good for the Sixers. He's a great scoring guard to come off the bench for them. Um, the only thing is, it doesn't matter if Embiid's not healthy.
Yep,
Is
and
the qualifier? He's an expiring contract. I feel like probably they are going to re-sign him, but we'll see what that looks like in the offseason. But just from a fit standpoint and from a scoring standpoint, perfect.
like you said too. I mean, this matters if Embiid's healthy. I mean, of course they'll have the bird rights; they can re-sign him. So this can be in play, more of a play for next year. But really, and we'll talk about some other moves they made later. You saw this trade at like 10 a.m. or whenever it happened, and you're like, oh my goodness, okay, they're still gunning for a playoff run. I like this. And then you're like, we'll get more into those later. But fit wise, I like it. I feel like Buddy Hield's kind of been shunned off a little bit, especially like Pacers fans really like were gunning to trade him. He didn't want to stay in Indiana, so it kind of made a lot of sense to move on. But I think he's going to help this team a ton, especially just spacing wise and really knockdown shooter. I mean, he's a guy who can drop 25 on any given night if he shoots like 7 for 9 from three. So I mean, definitely a guy who can really help you in the playoffs just with one explosive game.
100%. This particular trade did get turned into a three-team trade involving the San Antonio Spurs. The Pacers rerouted Marcus Morris and a second to the Spurs and ended up getting Doug McDermott back in response, who has obviously played for the Pacers before. It will essentially be their Buddy Hield replacement. He'll be their primary scorer outside of Neesmith off the bench. And I mean, he knows the system. He's been there before, so I quite like this. It's a little, like you said, weird that the Pacers were getting off of Heald, but from everything that I've heard, he obviously requested a trade before the season, so expiring contract probably wasn't going to stay. You netted 3 second-round picks and got McDermott. Okay, I mean, the big draw here is what's going to happen here with the 76ers, but 3 second-round picks, nothing to scoff at. It's a lot of seconds. And then we lead into a very, very, very frustrating trade. Toronto Raptors and the Utah Jazz. Chris, take it away on this one because I'm just too frustrated with this.
So Toronto acquires Kelly
Agbaji.
Olynyk and Ochai Obaji for Kyra Lewis, Otto Porter Jr., and they end up giving a first round pick. And for me, Toronto here, it just they obviously earlier before the deadline they gave up Pascal Siakam. They ended up trading OG Anunoby, so it really felt like they were taking the direction of, hey, we're gonna rebuild, we're gonna kind of sell our assets and just get younger. And now you trade for Kelly Olynyk, which is like, okay, that's cool and whatnot, but you're giving up a pick in the process. Of course, it's in a draft that's not very deep, and a lot of people are looking at this draft as one of the weaker drafts in recent memory. But to me, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be like, okay, yeah, Kelly Olynyk's this guy. Let's give up this first round pick unless they really like Abaji that much to where you're able to give up that pick. And it's just, I don't know. To me, it's a mystery. I feel like the Raptors just are kind of lost somewhere in the middle. They're not really picking a direction, and this trade kind of just is the personification of that, if we're being honest.
This is what we've seen for years now from the Raptors. They like to eat their cake and have it too, and are just very confusing. We saw this last year when they traded a first, right? Just one first for Jakob Poeltl.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm
yes.
pretty sure it was just
Mhm.
one first for Jakob Poeltl. They ended up re-signing him to a very fair value contract. Maybe we see them do that this year again with Kelly Olynyk. I mean, I like Kelly Olynyk. He's having one of his better seasons. Achai Agbaji is an interesting player. And to be fair, the first round pick they gave up is the least favorable between Houston, Utah, Clippers, and OKC. So very likely it's going to be between 25 and 30
Mhm.
in a draft for it's a 2024 pick in a draft that's considered to be relatively weak. So maybe I mean, and Agbaji was a
He's a
lottery pick
top
before.
15, I believe, or he was maybe even lottery. I'd have to double check, but
He
he
no,
was.
he was. He's 100%. He was a
Mhm.
lottery pick. So I mean, Toronto must really like him. They must really like Olynyk. It's until I see the grand scheme of it, Toronto is just very confusing. I just don't love them using first round picks like this. But I mean, Otto Porter, whatever. I like Kyra Lewis. Actually, he's decent. Um, it's just frustrating.
Mhm.
And if we're being very honest, I thought Utah kind of should have gotten more value here as well. Um,
Especially seeing how many players ended up going for second round picks. It was a little interesting to see. Okay, this is what you got for first round pick. You know what I mean? So, but we'll
yeah,
we'll talk
it's not
about
even
that
that
later as we go.
Toronto didn't get good value here. Like I like the players they got. It's just puzzling to send to trade draft capital when you're kind of rebuilding.
Mm.
But yeah, Utah really didn't get enough back in this deal, for being very honest. But we will continue and digress into other less exciting things. 76ers sent out Daniil House and a second round pick. this is pretty much just a pure salary dump for the 76ers. Like Chris was saying earlier, after we saw the Buddy Hield trade, we're like, oh, okay, what are they going to do? Maybe we see another big move out of them. But they just kind of salary dumped Daniil House for a second and get a top 55 protected second, so a nothing pick. Back from the Pistons, and the Pistons have already waived Daniil House, so
Hmm.
they
And correct
basically just got they got paid to get to take on Daniil House with a second round
and
pick.
correct me if I'm wrong too. We obviously haven't seen who's been bought out yet, but this is more than likely a move just to get under a certain threshold to access the
Sign Kyle
buyout
Lowry.
market.
To more than likely sign Kyle Lowry
Hmm.
if we're all being very honest with one
So
another.
I mean,
But yeah,
factor that into these trades, you'll hear for them, but that's more than likely the case going forward for that.
100%. And then we kind of lead into one of my more favorite trades of the day. Dallas gets Daniel Gafford by just matching salaries with Rashawn Holmes and giving up OKC's first round pick this year. So again, it won't be a very good first round pick. And get Daniel Gafford, who
Mhm.
is a very, very serviceable center, which Dallas has needed for years.
Yeah,
Eric Lively obviously is playing great for Dallas, but I think Daniel Gafford gives them some great size up front. He's a great pick and roller, so that's a plus for both Kyrie and Luca, and he's an exponentially great lob threat.
And that's a big thing too. Like we've seen Dallas over the last few years kind of struggle at that center position. You have Derek Lively, who looks very promising, but he's still young. You don't want to run him into the ground, have him play heavy minutes, especially when you're trying to have this team go deep into the playoffs. I think Daniel Gafford's perfect to kind of 24, 25 minutes. You have them each play half the game, and that's a really good center rotation. Both can be lob threats, both pretty good rebounders. I mean, I really like this for Dallas, and honestly, this is one of the more underrated trades throughout the day.
Oh, 100% agree. I'm just going to follow this right up into the other big trade Dallas ended up making. They acquired PJ Washington, who we saw his name thrown around a lot out there. I thought he was going to end up going to the Clippers, but he ends up going to Dallas. They match salaries with Seth Curry and Grant Williams, who 1 year into his contract, coming off the Celtics, gets traded from Dallas. He just didn't shoot it very well. Defensively, he was great, but his shot could not fall. Also ended up giving Charlotte a top 2 protected first round pick in 2027. I will say that's interesting for a lot of different reasons. In the short term, I love the additions of Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington for
Mhm.
the front court of Dallas. Getting rid of a 2027 first round pick that's only top 2 protected, don't love that as much for a team that doesn't really have a lot of long-term commitments from Luca, in the sense that we've already had a couple frustrating years. Yes, this year I love the pieces they're putting around him. Him and Kyrie work well off each other. But we're talking about 2027, 3, 4 years from now, have another disappointing playoff run or two in a very stacked West right now. That pick could really come back to haunt them.
And that's
But if we're talking about the immediate, huge pickups for Dallas in PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford.
and that's been the biggest pushback I've seen too. That 2027 pick, especially for someone like PJ Washington, who he's not going to defend a whole lot, and that's kind of the thing with this Dallas team. They don't have a ton of defense. You definitely improve the front court 100% over what they had before. PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, total improvement. A lot of people pushing back on the defense and the fact that you gave up a first round pick for PJ Washington that's only top 2 protected in 2027. But I mean, the way they're probably looking at it is, hey, we need to build around Luca right now because this is our franchise player, and if we keep him unhappy, if we're scared to use this ammunition, he's gonna leave anyway. So I mean, I get it from that aspect. Definitely a little scary giving up that pick, but I mean, this front court will be much improved, especially offensively. It's just gonna come down to that defense, and I 100% understand the pushback, especially like with PJ Washington. Some people feel they gave up too much with the pick, but definitely improvement, at least player for player. We'll see how it goes towards the playoffs. That defense is going to be a little bit suspect, though. I will say that. I like the moves, but that's my biggest concern.
I mean, yes, they maybe didn't answer it as much as I would have liked them to, but we'll see. Luca and Kyrie, if they can score enough, it doesn't matter sometimes.
Sometimes, but I mean,
Uh,
4 out of 7 games, that's tough, man. That's a tough ask.
I will agree with you in a very tough West. Speaking of the West, OKC jumped into the conversation, and what was probably the most surprising player traded today, just because I thought his salary was too much. Uh, Gordon Hayward traded to OKC. Old Celtics legend Gordon Hayward going to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They gave up Trey Mann, Davis Bertans, and CG Mikic and 2 second-round picks. Pretty much just matching salary. I mean, Bertans, I will imagine, gets bought out. I mean, Trey Mann's fine, and Mikic is a very serviceable point guard. The big thing here for Oklahoma City, and Gordon Hayward stay healthy. I think the fit's perfect for them. He can defend, he can shoot, he can pretty much facilitate any way he needs to, and a team that, for the most part, can do everything great top to bottom. He gives them a great veteran presence who's been in the playoffs before. I mean, he's an expiring deal. I love this. This is probably my favorite individual trade of the entire day.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Gordon Hayward just going to be an absolutely great veteran presence for this team that really hasn't seen the playoffs. This is a team that's kind of taken that huge leap. They're going to be a top seed, and it's great to really have that veteran who's been there. He's been there. He's done that. And especially for a team, you don't want to be like, I'm not trying to throw shade at them, but the Grizzlies of last year who got bounced in the first round. This is a team that has the talent to win a playoff series or two, and adding someone like a Gordon Hayward, who also, like you said, plays really well. With like he fits into this lineup very well. Like I really like this move, and I think this will be one of the moves we look back in May and say, "Wow, adding Gordon Hayward really helped in this playoff series." So I like it. I didn't even realize really thinking about it, the Thunder really had that much extra salary in Bertans and Trey Mann and everyone else in the trade. So this was something not really on my radar, but I definitely like it looking, especially because they really only had to match salary. I mean, salary and 2 second-round picks. Who cares? OKC has like 50 picks, so definitely
OKC
a W of a
OKC
trade.
got better at the trade deadline and still did not give up a single first round pick.
That's
Just
the insane part. Not a single
so
first
irritating.
round pick.
So they're so irritating. We're gonna go into another probably monster trade. In the grand scheme of things, Detroit ends up offloading Alec Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic to the New York Knicks, who, if we remember, already acquired OG Anunoby. They end up getting back Malachi Flynn, Evan Fournier, Quentin Grimes, and Ryan Archidiaco, and 2 second-round picks. Chris, I'm gonna let you take the lead on this one because we both have some pretty intense thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously for the Knicks, it's pretty obvious. Bojan Bogdanovic obviously helps his team offensively right away, and honestly, even having Alec Burks, he'll be a good rotation player for them. Bogdanovic, just another wing who can come in, shoot, score. He can facilitate a little bit. He really could do it all, and especially like I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but OG Anunoby was just announced he's going to be out for I think what 3 to 4 weeks or something along those lines.
It
This
was
is
2 to 3,
this
but
2 to 3, yeah. This is really gonna help that like cover for that stretch, and then in the playoffs, obviously. I mean, Bogdanovich is one of those players you really want on your team. I mean, I love this move for the Knicks, and they gave up Quentin Grimes in the deal, and I really like Quentin Grimes. He struggled over the last year or so. He really came out 2 years ago and was balling for this team, one of the best 3-and-D players, but you know, in the grand scheme of things, Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks are a lot more valuable than Quentin Grimes. Obviously, they gave up Malachi Flynn and Ryan Archidiakono. I mean, not really much. And Fournier, but Fournier, it was all just to match salary, so nothing crazy. And the second round picks, they're just kind of there. It's definitely disappointing Detroit did not get a first round pick out of Bojan Bogdanovic, especially after last year where they had declined multiple offers with first round picks. I really like Quentin Grimes, and I'm a lot higher on him than I feel like a lot of people are, especially after the down year this year. I just I think they could have gotten more value out of Bojan, and I'm a little disappointed in that sense.
yeah, 100%. This is a New York Knicks steal. They absolutely swindled the Pistons, if we're being perfectly honest with one another. Um, Alex Burks and Bojan are going to solidify their bench unit.
Hmm.
It's just truly insane to me that they basically just had to match salaries, 2 seconds, and Quentin Grimes. Like that's it. Alec Burks is a slight improvement over Quentin Grimes for sure. At the guard position, and then Bojan is going to be a perfect addition at the wing spot. behind OG Anunoby. And like you said, with him being out a couple weeks, obviously maybe something they didn't 100% know, but they had to had some kind of inclination. Either way, though, this Knicks team, if healthy, and when I mean healthy, if Mitchell Robinson comes back and before the playoffs or even into the playoffs healthy, watch out.
They're gonna be
This team
scary.
could be this team could be sneaky good. Um,
I'm not gonna lie. I have the 10-man rotation pulled up right now. This Knicks team with the healthy Mitchell Robinson is gonna have a 10-man rotation of Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, OG Ananobi, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Bojan Bogdanovic, Josh Hart, Alec Burks, Precious Achua, and Isaiah Hardenstein. That's one hell of a rotation. And if you told me they're in the Eastern Conference Finals come May, I wouldn't call you crazy. I really would not. They've been playing that well, and that's one heck of a lineup.
yeah, there's a lot of gritty guys in there that I really like. I mean, Tibbs is going to coach them hard, play them hard. They play great defense as it is, and now they added a bunch more scoring. Whew. New York Knicks, man, good for them. Speaking of New York, the New York Nets, or Brooklyn Nets, as some of us losers are going to call them, traded away Spencer Dinwiddie to the Toronto Raptors and ended up netting Dennis Schroeder and Thad Young. I don't really care for this trade on either side. It's a little puzzling why Toronto did this to begin with, but they did it. And Toronto is going to buy out Spencer Dinwiddie from everything
Mhm.
I've heard.
That'll be the more interesting part of this too, to see who gets Dinwiddie, because he'll definitely be a coveted player on the buyout market. I could see there's like 20 teams I could look on and say, yeah, they can use Spencer Dinwiddie. So, I mean, off the top of my head, I think of the Lakers, I think of the Magic, I think of really any team that can use some sort of combo guard. He's had a down year, but let's be honest, you can fit him into almost any team, and I know there's going to be restrictions on who can sign him, but he'll help out the majority of these teams that are able to fight for him in the buyout market.
100%. He'll probably be a top option on the buyout market. I mean, I guess Toronto saves some salary long term for next year, but it's still a little weird. Then we head into another very puzzling one from the 76ers standpoint, trading off Patrick Beverly to the Milwaukee Bucks, netting campaign and a second round pick from them. I quite like campaign, but I don't really understand why you are helping out the Bucks defensively by giving them Pat Bev. It's puzzling if you don't think about them as being conference rivals. It's even more puzzling when you think about them being conference rivals. I like this trade a lot for the Bucks. For being very honest, I think he is going to be great defensive coverage for that guard rotation because they don't really have much going on there right now outside of Dame. Now they traded campaign, but sure. I mean, 76ers are doing things.
Yeah, this is a team that definitely struggled like with backcourt defense all year, especially with Adrian Griffin. I mean, obviously they've struggled with Doc right out the gate, but Patrick Beverly is going to come in and fix a lot of things there. I mean, obviously he's not going to light the world on fire. Let's keep it realistic, but I don't like you said, I don't understand them trading him to a rival, let alone getting rid of Patrick Beverly who I mean, he wasn't knocking anyone's socks off, but he was fine in Philadelphia. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with trading him for campaign straight up. I don't know the exact cap implications and if that extra million they saved completely helps them on the buyout market, but I feel like there probably would have been better ways to get to that if that's the main reason for the trade.
It may be. It's just a little puzzling. Another veteran that ended up getting traded away from the Nets, Royce O'Neal, ends up landing with the Phoenix Suns. I really like that fit for him on the Suns.
Sneaky move.
They ended up just trading a bunch of their veteran minimum guys, Watanabe, Matu, Jordan Goodwin, and Bates Diop. Some breaking news while we're recording this, by the way. Danilo Gallinari is going to be waived by the Pistons.
Oh,
So that's interesting. Please sign with the Celtics. Please, 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 please.
Celtics legend
Um,
returning.
Danilo Gallinari, absolutely. And Brooklyn also nets 3 second-round picks in this. But Phoenix has Royce O'Neal, who I thought was out of their price range, but they just piled together 4 minimum guys, and they got him.
Yeah,
But I mean, Royce O'Neal's going to give it. I think he's a great role player for the Suns. I
yeah.
think they actually needed some good depth, and he provides that for them.
Yeah, definitely. Much needed depth, especially for a team that, needed extra wing help. I mean, he's going to, typical 3-and-D role player, he's going to shoot the ball, he's going to play great defense. He can do a little bit of it all off the bench. This is a move that, if you were a Suns fan, this is probably what you were hoping for at the deadline, and definitely love this move for them. And
It's
yeah,
not the sexiest name in the
no.
world. I get it. But Royce O'Neal honestly was probably the best player you're going to get, and he's a veteran. Like,
Hmm.
he's a veteran who actually knows how to play. I
He's
think
been
he's
in
going to
playoff
do
series.
wonders for this team. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. I think, to be very honest with you, Chris, that's the last real major trade that's worth bringing up. There's a couple minor ones.
Hmm.
Salary dumps. Robin Lopez traded away. Celtics acquired Jaden Springer. Corey Joseph traded away from the Golden State Warriors. But these are all salary dumps, to be very honest with you. Nothing real eye catching or
Hmm.
popping. The only other thing I really want to bring up is Detroit waived Killian Haynes. Top seven pick 2 years ago, 3 years ago now.
Believe it was
Not too
2021.
long ago. Okay, so about 3 years ago now, they ended up waiving him. Just really could not play very well at all in Detroit, and if you can't play well in Detroit, well, that
You're in
doesn't look great
trouble.
for you. Yeah, but I mean, still what? 22 years old, very young, obviously. I'm sure someone will take a stab at him, but pretty big in the idea of another 2021 draftee James Bouknight also got cut by the
Charlotte
Charlotte
Hornets.
Hornets.
Hmm.
So that was just not a great draft for guards apparently because nobody is sticking. Number 7 and 11 both got cut within 2 years. It's pretty bad, guys. Draft better. But real quick, we've gone through all the major trades. I just really quickly want to highlight. I mean, I loved, and I think I made it apparent what the Knicks and the Mavericks did. They're clear winners for me. You and I think have already talked about this off air, and we both
Hmm.
agree there are two pretty big name omissions, big markets that we have not spoken about yet. One of them being the Los Angeles Lakers, and the other being the Warriors. Chris, what are your thoughts on Lakers being omitted today from trade deadline?
It's definitely disappointing. I definitely expected the Lakers to make some sort of move. And we talked about it a little off air, like you said too. I guess it really came down to the asking price for a lot of these players was too high. You mentioned Dorian Finney-Smith. They wanted more than a first round pick for him. That just wasn't going to happen. DeJounte was kind of taken off the market, which, I mean, for the Hawks might have been the smarter move. The offseason, they can probably gauge more interest, get a little bit more value. And really, the Lakers have been playing better, and I feel like that was probably some of the thought process for them to stand put. But like you said, we've seen this with D'Angelo Russell before. He'll play good for 5 games. He'll play bad for 10 games. He's streaky. He's as streaky as they come. And really, I guess what it comes down to is this Lakers team. No move they were going to make at the deadline was going to put them over the top to be title contenders. So I guess it's not worth mortgaging your future, but it is disappointing. Like you couldn't get one quality role player that you're just like, okay, yeah, I really like that. Even if it's like, I don't know, someone at the bottom of your rotation. I mean, we'll probably see them in the buyout market. And like I said, I could see a Spencer Dinwiddie going over there, but it's definitely disappointing. As for the Warriors are just at a really weird place right now. I don't anticipate them to even make the play in at this rate. As of right now, they are sitting at 23 and 25. They're 10 and a half games out of first, but realistically, they've been playing better over the last few games, but it's been against bad teams. I also, same as the Lakers, don't think any trade they would have made would have actually propelled them to being title contenders. So now it's kind of this weird, they're in this weird area where they kind of have to re sign Clay, they have to retool the roster, and it's going to be really weird transition for the Warriors. It's definitely disappointing both of these teams didn't buy in, but I understand it to a degree, but it's definitely disappointing. And if I was a fan of these teams, I'd definitely be upset too. I get the frustration.
Oh, 100% understand the frustration. Outside of those two teams, I mean, Detroit, I mean, no, like, you trade Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic, who else did I say? Monte Morris.
Hmm.
They traded Marvin Bagley as well. Like, and you net.
Zero
Zero.
first round picks.
Zero first
Hmm.
round picks.
If you had told me all four of
Zero.
them, if you had told me all four of them and Killian Hayes wouldn't be on the team by the trade deadline and you got zero first round picks, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. I would have asked, what are they doing? So, in the grand scheme of things, that's very disappointing too if you're a Detroit fan.
It's just horrible. Honestly, so horrible. But I also want to shout out the Thunder as being a very good winner. They only really made the one trade, but Hayward's gonna do healthy Hayward will do tremendous things for them. There are obviously some other teams that didn't make any trades, but for the most part, I think all the teams that should and needed to and had the ability to, because we need to remember the luxury tax provides a lot of interesting restrictions. But that was our trade deadline. Why the Chicago Bulls didn't participate, we'll never know.
Yep.
But we thank you for listening. What trades do you wish happened? What players do you love that your team acquired? Please let us know in the comments below. My name is Jacob. This is my co-host Christopher.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button. And like Jacob said, let us know whether you hated what your favorite team did or whether you loved it. Thank you for tuning in and have a good one.